Hi everybody, I am Maxim and this is my first ever book review. The ones who have seen my announcement know what is happening right now. The other ones are probably completely clueless. I'll summarize it really briefly. The last couple of months I've had plenty of time to read a lot of books and I want to share the value and pleasure I get out of it with you guys. I'll be doing that in a kind of book review where I'll be discussing some books I've read in more detail. I decided to do it in English and I decided to call it Go Read Something. So if you like the concept, please let me know. If you have any tips or advice also, please tell me. Okay, I'm just going to get right into it. With the 3 books I have chosen to discuss today out of the 19 I have read the last 6 months. I'll put like a kind of list on the screen somewhere here with all books I've read the last 6 months. So if you see one of these books and you think, oh, that's really interesting, maybe Maxim should discuss this book, then also please let me know. I'll see what I can do. So, alright, let's get into it with the first book. Okay, so the first book I've chosen is Factfulness, 10 Reasons We Are Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think by Hans Rosling. Hans Rosling starts the book with a test of 13 multiple choice questions, each of them with 3 options about the state of our world. One of those questions is, for example, in the last 20 years, the proportion of the population in extreme poverty has A. doubled, B. remained the same, or C. halved. In the tests, the Belgian respondents, only 5% of those respondents got this question right and answered option C, that the proportion has halved. I'll also share the link with you guys so you can try the test for yourself, it's quite fun. After doing the test, you'll see that most people actually only get 2 or 3 out of 13 questions right. Chimpanzees who would, well, guess randomly, they would get 33% on average. They would actually score better than 80% of people who participate in the test, so that's quite fun to see. So most of the times this is because we have a world image that is way too negative, and that's the reason why we answer these questions wrong. In the book, Hans Rosling goes through 10 instincts that contribute to this skewed world image. One of them, for example, being the gap instincts, where we often think in we, the West, for example, versus them, the rest, or good versus bad, or developed and developing countries, in a distribution looking like 2 humps, right? And Hans Rosling emphasizes that thinking in these absolutes often makes you lose all nuance, and he prefers to, for example, look at countries in 4 different income levels, but also for other things he prefers to look at things into a continuum, in like a distribution with 1 hump, with the majority often being in the middle. Another one is the negativity instincts, where we focus much more heavily on negative news, and he also tells us why the media is reporting much more on negative news items. We often mention how bad things are, but deny that things could actually be better as well. So saying that something is improving while it's still bad, for some people it's the same as saying, oh, you're denying the problem, which of course is not the same thing. So I think we should be aware of that as well. This way, Hans Rosling goes through these 10 instincts that contribute to this negative world image. And I've read comparable books like Enlightenment Now from Steven Pinker and Waarom de wereld niet naar de knoppen gaat from Maarten Boudry. But I guess this book is really clear, well structured, quite light and practical. So I decided to discuss this book. I think it's really interesting to see how our behavior and thoughts are impacted by our instincts. When you are aware of these instincts, you can try to make sure that you're not falling into these thinking errors. I myself try to pay attention that I'm not generalizing too quickly. I'm always comparing standalone numbers with something, that I'm looking at problems from multiple perspectives, etc. I would always recommend this book because in a way I think we are all victims of what our instincts make us say, believe and do. So I think it's really valuable for everybody to be more aware of it and more conscious of it. So I mean, give it a try if you thought this sounded interesting. Okay, so the second book is called Tribe: On Homecoming and Belonging by Sebastian Junger. There's two main stories in this book that I remember quite vividly. The first story is about a group of soldiers who are in a terrible war situation. They really are struggling every day, day in, day out. They really have to work hard, to work together to achieve certain things. And you really see how they become closer, how they get to know each other, how they trust each other, how you see they can really count on each other. They really know each other very thoroughly. And they form these really special, valuable, meaningful relationships with people around, with the other soldiers. And once the war is over, they return to their normal lives. They stop seeing these other soldiers, of course, and they get back into their old routine of just working, seeing some friends from time to time, meeting with the family, whatever. But they really miss something. They really miss these meaningful relationships with those other soldiers. And they just miss meaningful relationships in general. People notice that when they return to these normal lives, the relationships with the people around them were just not the same as they experienced during the war. So they ended up very often in a kind of depression, even more often than people who experienced or had a post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's one story. The other story is about a kind of Western colony and a tribe in one region. And at one point, a person from the Western colony who went hunting got captured by the tribe. And the person was kept in captivity as a prisoner, and he had to do all kinds of chores for the tribe. Now, the person who was kept in captivity really started to get to know these people in the tribe. He would see how they would act, how they would operate on a daily basis, what they would find important, how they would value, for example, relationships with other people, how closely they would be, how thoroughly they would know each other as well, how heavily they trust each other and can count on each other. And he after a while he became ingrained in this way of living, in a way, and he started to cooperate and live with them. Now, after some time, the person who was captured was freed by this Western colony again, and he returned back to his normal life. Now, when he was back to his normal life, he resumed his routine, and he went back to his fast-paced life where he did see his friends, but the relationships he experienced with those friends at home were just not of the same level as the ones he experienced in the tribe. The people in the tribe were much closer, and they really knew each other, and they really could count on each other. And he just voluntarily fled back to the tribe to continue his life there. So those are two stories that really indicate to me that people find it very important to experience meaningful relationships with the people around them. And that's a question I ask myself. Okay, do I experience those relationships in a way that I want them to? More often than not, I mean, I know my friends to a certain extent, of course, and I guess most of us do, but I found it mostly insufficient, to be honest. So I decided to do something about it more proactively and meet with my friends and just discuss other things than we would normally do. Normally it would be about, I don't know, how is your job, how is your hobby, what's the thing that's been on the news, politics, this. So I decided to proactively be more open about certain topics and ask questions and be sincerely interested in who they are and what they find valuable and important. And I think that's been really a good evolution in how I see my relationships with the people I care about. So I think it's something I learned from this book and I found really valuable. So there you go. Okay, so the third book is called The Righteous Minds, from social psychologist Jonathan Haidt, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Jonathan Haidt is one of the most important thinkers in the field of moral psychology. So, meaning what do we find important or what we think is right, how do we come to believe this, and how do we act on it. In the book, he develops the moral foundations theory. So, everybody has things they find important, and these things differ from person to person because everybody has unique genes, unique environment, unique experiences. Of course, there's some similarity inside groups, for example, that binds them together, but the morality does not only bind people, it also blinds them in a way. The morality makes them act from intuitions with reasoning coming only after these intuitions. So we have often made up our mind about something and will justify it afterwards. For example, I can say pure from gut feeling that I really dislike the children skipping classes to go protesting for our climate. Okay, so that's my intuition, and afterwards I will justify it with arguments backing up my feeling, my intuitions. While there might be like 10 better arguments for the other side, for example. Now, what Jonathan Haidt does in this book is he tries to see what the main foundations are of morality. He comes to define 6 foundations. Each one he describes how they were originally triggered, so in the past, and what the current triggers are. Of course, these things change all the time. The first foundation is the care and harm foundation. This one is about love, it's about compassion, it's about protecting your children, protecting people who are not able to protect themselves, for example. The second one is fairness. This is about proportionality. Do you get what you deserve? It's a kind of law of karma. If you kill someone, you deserve to be punished. If you're not bothered to work because you're too lazy, you don't deserve our taxpayers' money, etc. So that's the fairness principle. The third one is liberty and oppression. This can be social justice or equality or being able to do what you want to do. The fourth one is loyalty, so patriotism, being loyal to your family or your local sports team or whatever. Authority is the fifth one, so respect your boss, respect your father, respect the elderly, in general respect the hierarchy that exists. And then the final one is sanctity. Sanctity meaning holiness, purity, cleansing the impurity, etc., etc. So Jonathan Haidt digs deep into these 6 foundations and he links them with politics and religion. For example, he'll say that conservatives in general value all 6 of these foundations, while most progressives actually value care, liberty and fairness much more, but value loyalty, sanctity and authority a lot less. This causes conservative politicians to be able to play with different moral principles, while progressives often fall back on the same three principles. I think this book is not that easy and is quite conceptual, but nevertheless it's really interesting and it makes you really curious about our human nature. I think if you can be aware of these differences and foundations, you'll be able to understand others and also yourself a lot better, I think. Whenever I get into a discussion with someone, I really try to understand why they believe what they believe, and I try to understand where they are coming from, and I think that can be quite valuable, also just to get to know each other a lot better. So there you go, this was the first book review. Please let me know what you think. Did you like it? What did you like? What didn't you like? Should the discussion be a bit shorter or longer? Also, what books would you recommend? Is there a book from the list of books I read that you want me to discuss next time? Also, just give me as much feedback as possible so we can make this valuable for as many people as possible. Thanks a lot. This was Maxime. Now go read something. Bye.